Oops. Hello, all. Helps to turn off the speakers. So, people are very, very quick when you ask for advice to insist that free tools are the only way to go for absolutely everything. However, like with most things in life, there are some things to consider before you make that decision. So, hang on and let's get started so we can talk about this. Okay, so you reach out, you're looking for opinions, and there are some people who are just steadfast in their belief that the only thing to do is to use free. That's it. There's nothing else. Just use something free. And there's absolutely good free stuff out there, and there's absolutely times when free is the way to go. However, we like to keep things balanced around here. So we're going to talk about what you should think about as you're making these kinds of decisions and what the pros and cons are of free versus paid. And there is a gray area in between because, this is real life. So before you go in and make any big decisions on stuff, let's talk about what you need to think about, right? So what am I talking about? This type of thing comes up when people are asking for advice on pretty much any kind of software-based tool or software as a service, anything like that. So just as examples, right? So super basic, I all love Canva, right? And you can do Canva for free or you can do Canva as a paid tool. And there are pros and cons on both sides of that, right? It also extends into things like if you're looking for some sort of office tool, right? So you need something to write, something to create presentations in, something to track your numbers in your spreadsheets. So there are things like Microsoft Office, paid. Yeah, I know there's a free version too, but the Microsoft free version falls into all the other free stuff. So we're going to talk about Microsoft paid version, which is what a lot of people end up using because that's what they get, or that's what they know, that's what they're familiar with. Or there's free stuff, right? Like Google Docs, Google Sheets, Google Slides, or tools like LibreOffice. So Google Sheets, Docs, all that kind of stuff. That's an online tool, right? So it's a software as a service kind of thing. LibreOffice is basically competition for Microsoft Office, but it is free. It's an open source thing. It's supported by the community. They accept donations, that kind of thing. Where I hear this a lot in my world is that when you're looking for some sort of streaming or recording tool, but on whichever side of the fence you're on, I'm PC, so I'm constantly getting people who are like, why do you use vMix? You should use OBS. It's free. It's blah, 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 which is true. I mean, OBS exists and it's great and many, many people use it. And, it is free and vMix is paid. So just so you understand what types of things we're talking about. This is not limited to any one thing. It's pretty much everything across the board. When we're talking about free, I mean, there's levels of paid and there's levels of free, right? So we'll start with the levels of free. So basically you end up with either free with limited functionality, free for a limited time. That really, for me, falls more under the free trial kind of thing. But still, people, call it free. And it is while you're using it. And the free with a limited time thing, sometimes that is limited functionality. Sometimes it's full functionality. Sometimes it throws a watermark, their logo, on the work that you do. Sometimes it doesn't. So that depends on the situation. And then there's free with no limitations. So we're going to start by talking about the pros of using a free solution. But before we do that, I really should introduce myself to people who are new here. Hi, my name is Kathleen. I'm here as your tech coach. Short version of the story is technology is my day gig. It's also my hobby. So I live in this world 24/7. And so I tend to be the person people in my world turn to when they want advice, sense the topic. And so I know not everybody has somebody, so that's why I do this show. So I hope that you find this useful. If you have any questions or comments, go ahead and throw them in, and I will take a look. All right, so back on topic. So the upside of using free, right? The initial cost, can't beat it, right? It's free. We'll get into that more in a second, but that's where we're starting, right? Free, of course, is super easy on the budget. Again, we'll get into that in a second. If you only need whatever it is for a short time or a specific one-off purpose or solution, free may rock your world, right? It may absolutely be the best way to go, because if it's something you don't do all the time, it's literally something out of the blue, you need to do this thing, and then you're not going to need it again, free definitely can be a lifesaver. Free trial, right? The free for a limited period of time, that to me is a no-brainer, right? Because it gives you the opportunity to check out whatever solution or tool you're looking at, work with it long enough to really get a feel for whether or not it's the right fit for you, if it's going to provide the right solutions, all that kind of stuff. So for me, that's a huge win, right? That across the board, that is just a big yes. Thank you very much. That's how things should work. Generally, with free options, there's no imposed or no forced upgrades required. I say usually because there's always exceptions to anything that, you're going to state as an absolute in life. But most of the time, you load it, you use it, and you're good to go. And a lot of the free stuff is also open source, which is it's a community thing. It's the theory, which has some weight, that because it's open source and the community is contributing to it, you're getting more eyes on it. So they're making sure things are stable and you're getting a lot of different inputs on it and all that kind of stuff. And I have a lot of respect for the open source community, and they do a lot of good work. And very often the stuff that they do is free or freemium, which we'll get into in a minute. When we talk about the cons of free, okay, there's a cost to free. Okay, nothing is free in life. There's no such thing as a free lunch. You've all heard these things, and it's true, right? Nothing is free. The first thing for me always is to evaluate the amount of time free is going to cost you. So what am I talking about? How much more effort are you going to have to put into using this tool on a regular basis, because there's no basic support system for it, right? Sure, I'm sure there's probably forums, and maybe or maybe not, the person or team who puts it out makes themselves available to help. That's on a case-by-case basis. There's generally not a lot of how-to, right, instructions on when you first get it, how to set it up. When you run into a problem, that's your time to go and figure it out. You're going to have to go and poke around, and it's not going to be so easy, because it's not like you can put in the term and get one magical solution. You're going to get differing solutions and competing solutions, and you're going to have to figure out which one works best for you. So time is definitely a big cost of free. That just be life. The other thing with free is what I referenced earlier, which is the freemium model. So what that means is you've got something that's free, but in order to get additional functionality, which for you may be core functionality, right? That's a wavy line depending on who you are, what you're trying to do. You may have to pay to get that extra piece. Now, there's different ways to do that. Sometimes it's a one-time thing. Most of the time with the freemium, it's a one-time thing, but sometimes it is a subscription. So a good example of that is Canva, because a lot of us have worked in that, and if you come around here, you've probably tripped across one of my Canva sessions. So Canva you can do for free, and they really offer a ton of functionality. I mean, it really is impressive what they're making available for free. I'll explain in a minute. But if you want to use some of the premium stuff, right? So they offer, as part of the free, you get a certain amount of free images, free sounds, free music, free templates, all that kind of stuff. However, if you want to use something that is outside of that, something that's over on the premium side of things, you have two options. You can do the freemium model, which is you can pay for the use of that one individual thing, or you can bite the bullet and sign up for the subscription, which is a monthly fee. You can pay annually or monthly. So that's sort of the tiers that you're going to run into this kind of thing. The other things, just as a different example, because I'm not picking on anybody when I give examples. I know examples make it more concrete for people. So like with OBS, right? Yes, OBS, you can use it for streaming, you can use it for recording, you can use it for podcasting. It's very powerful. There's different flavors of it. So that's part of the tripping point for a lot of people, is because a lot of people hear free and OBS and they think it's a single thing, and it's not. There's different versions of OBS out there. So the first thing is you have to find out what version you're using. Then the next level is if you want to add something that doesn't come in the base OBS installation, that's when you now have to go and find add-ons and plugins. Some of those are free, some of those are cost. More time, possibly more money for you. Then it's your problem to figure out how to get it installed and how to get it to work. Sometimes that's super easy. Sometimes it's a giant pain in the neck. the gap between the two, pretty large. But it is something else to keep in mind. This is another thing that comes up when people come to me looking for ideas for websites, right? Personally, I prefer hand-coded websites, but I know these days I'm old school, but that gives you the most control. It gives you the cleanest installation, all that. But not everybody wants to learn HTML. I get it. So for those folks, I like to point them to Squarespace because they kind of bridge that gap between having templates and being able to customize them and then being able to even go in and mess with the code to get what you want. So that's sort of a nice thing. And everything is just there. Like all the functionality is there. Now, theoretically, could you run into something that they don't offer? Yes, I haven't yet, but absolutely that could happen. A lot of people are immediately, WordPress. WordPress is everything. And don't get me wrong, WordPress is everywhere and it's very successful until it's not. But I have a problem with WordPress on a couple of different levels. One being that it is notorious for imploding and people losing everything. And then there's lots of tiers and I get a lot of phone calls. Just know that. Part of the reason for that is because, again, WordPress as the initial install is fairly basic, pretty simple, and works. Like you don't have to go outside of that if you don't want to, but everybody does, right? And then they start load themes and then they start to load plugins and, oh, I want to do this. And then you start layering all these things on top of it. Okay, now, first of all, you're back to the problem I mentioned with OBS. You have to go find the one. You have to find the ones that's going to work on your version of WordPress. You're going to have to figure out how to install it. You're going to have to maintain it. You're going to have to update it when they send the updates, when they tell you there's an update available, because there's always vulnerabilities that come up because WordPress is a pretty popular target, and so on and so forth. This is all time, again, time and money that's coming away from you that for your free, right? So again, just something to keep in mind, but it is frustrating for a lot of people. For me, the issue too is most of the people who are doing these kinds of things aren't doing this for their business. They've got a business that they need the website for, right? Or they need to do live streaming for, or they need to create graphics for. So they don't want to fight around with all this stuff. They want to just have something that works so they can focus on their business. And every minute you're not focusing on your business, you're distracted and your business isn't moving forward. So again, this is what I'm talking about when I'm saying you've got to weigh the options. It's not that there's a yes or no across the board. Every situation is going to be a little bit different. Everybody's needs are going to be different. It could be that free outweighs everything for you because you don't have the money, and that's totally fine. But just know that these things are something to look at. One of the other things a lot of people run into with the free stuff is the user interfaces sometimes are a little awkward or cumbersome. That there's a bunch of different reasons for that. So sometimes it's an ad supported kind of thing. So that means you're in there and you're doing whatever you need to do. And then all of a sudden it stops working and all these ads start coming up, usually one or two at a time, but it interrupts your workflow. It interrupts your timeline because it's free, but you now have to watch this ad in order to keep going. It could just be that the workflow is awkward because the person who designed it to make sense for them, but that doesn't mean it's going to make sense for you. And because it's a freemium thing, they don't have necessarily other eyes or other testers look at it to help identify and resolve those things before it got into your hands. Trade-offs. So because I do software design for a living, like that doesn't really bother me because I've worked on so many different systems. But for people who are not super comfortable with the tech, that can be a huge stumbling block because it's confusing and it's slowing you down. And then you're like, did I do something wrong? So there's that. And sometimes the user interface is just awkward or weird or outdated, counterintuitive. That happens a lot. So the next thing, and this is probably the biggest thing as far as the free stuff goes, is yes, it's not free. Companies need to earn money, right? Nobody can exist for free on this planet. So your data, right? If the product is free, then you are really the product and it's your information going. Now, I know right away there's somebody out there ready to type in a furious fashion because they take our data for everything. Yes, they do. Absolutely. I'm not arguing that point. The difference is how much data, how transparent they are about it, and who they're selling it to. Okay? And again, there are bad companies out there doing bad and stupid things. We won't mention names, but we know who they are. But I'm just saying it's more likely to be a negative thing in a free kind of situation because they, just in my experience and when I read the industry stuff, that seems to follow for the industry. Those tend to be the ones that aren't quite as transparent about it. So you just need to keep that in mind. The one more thing that I'm going to mention, and then we're going to get into a little more detail, just on a couple of quick points here, is that when you're dealing with free stuff, you can't necessarily, there's not necessarily an option for upgrading when your needs exceed the capability of that free tool. Now, again, yes, I know. Don't go into the comments. I know that there are some paid tools that do this too, but the percentages are that for a free tool, this is more likely than it is in a paid tool. So again, you just need to keep that in mind, keep an eye in the future. Sometimes it's because of your needs for now that paying down the road is acceptable. That's totally fine. As long as you're making that informed choice, it's all good. Just make sure it's an informed choice. Okay, so we talked a little bit about this with the ad-supported, but basically all of this stuff is because these are businesses. These are, whether it's an individual, who's doing this stuff, they need to get paid, or it's a company, ads, selling your data, all that kind of stuff is how they support it if they're not getting money up front. Or if they're not charging enough, then it's sort of a hybrid thing of they're taking some money from you, but then they're also selling stuff. So, this is life. And again, it's not bad as long as you're aware of it. The ones that shove the ads in your face while you're trying to work, for me, are a no-go, right? If I have got too much to do, I'm working too many different jobs to be able to waste time watching a 5-minute ad. No, I'll pay. If your tool is important enough to me, I will pay. If it's not, then I'll go find something else because there's always something else out there I can go find. But just be aware of that. And also, all right, we'll say it now. Support your devs, right? So now there are people are going to be like, well, they get supported by the ad money and selling my data, which is sort of true. The thing with the ad supported and feeling okay with that being their only source of income is with all the privacy stuff that's been happening. This is sort of an aside, but just real quick. The value that the different companies are getting for paying to place an ad in an app or website or whatever are going to go down, right? Because their argument is going to be, thank you, Murphy. Their argument is going to be that because the privacy stuff has really taken away most of the tracking, you can't prove to me that the money I've given you for my ad actually did anything. Now, what's cute here is that they're not going to stop wanting to run ads. They're just not going to want to pay you for it because you can't provide the proof. So, yeah. So that's going to be an ongoing issue. So I think we're going to see a shift away from the ad thing a little bit because it's just not worth the hassle for the people who are doing this kind of stuff. The other thing I just want to put out there, and this is not a slam on free. This is not saying it's all bad, but you do want to do your research if you're going to pick a free option because of potential security issues. Security issues come at different levels, right? It could be malevolent, right? They could be on purpose. They're putting it out there for this whole purpose of getting you to install it to do bad things, okay? It's a small group, but they're a dangerous group. Then there's just lax security, right? Or inattention to detail, or the people who are building this wandered away and they haven't been doing updates on it. Those are the more regular types of security issues and things you're going to run into. So keep that in mind. Tied to that is also the fact that if you're using something free, whether it's a tool or it's a plugin or whatever, and operating system needs changes, browser needs changes, if the person who put that out there is not interested in updating it or has completely walked away from the project, you're now left with an app or a plugin that you won't be able to use and you may or may not be able to replace. And again, that gets into you got to have to figure out how to remove it, how to replace it, how to deal with any legacy stuff that maybe you need to be, maintaining in the process of doing all that. It gets hairy really, really fast. So there's that. Okay, let's take a little break here before we get into the paid stuff. Let me just check in. I've rearranged my studio in case you haven't noticed a different shot here. So we do want to, I have to look over here to read stuff. Oh, that's what, yes, that's exactly it. I do all the things, right? I'm IT pro by night, IT streamer by night. Yes. And, plus I have clients. So plus moderating, plus. So yes, I have my hand in a lot of different pies. It keeps me out of trouble because it keeps me busy and, we like living indoors and eating occasionally. So that's good too. Okay. Alrighty, so what else do I want to do? Oh, I do want to tell you that if you are a content creator, and we all are on some level, whether you're on social media, your website, you're running your own ads, or you're doing this kind of thing, I have a free PDF for you because I get into those moments just like everybody else does, like where you're like, I need to put something out there. I don't know what to do. My brain is completely shot. I created a list of 130 content ideas. They are not tech specific. They are general. I print it out. I shuffle the pages. I close my eyes. I point and I make that my topic. So it's out there for you as well. You go to yourtechcoach.com/content ideas, no spaces, and just have to put in your email address, and then you can get the document too, because hey, reducing stress is everybody's job, and I'm playing my part here. Alrighty, so hey, Laura, how you doing? Good to see you. Okay, so let's roll along here, and let's talk about. Let me just make sure I got all of the free stuff covered. Okay, we did. We're good. Murphy, you're making strange noises. Could you stop? Thank you. All right, so let's talk about paid. So with paid, I mean, that's pretty straightforward, right? You're paying to use the software or the tool or whatever. Like everything else, there are tiers, right? So there's paid. You pay one time and you just keep using it for as long as you want to use that tool. End of story. You don't have to upgrade necessarily. It depends on the company. Most of the time, if you're paying one time, they will make upgrades available. Usually after a certain point after you bought it, they're going to want some sort of fee if you want to upgrade. But most of those tools don't force you to upgrade unless, again, there's a significant issue, right? So if you're moving from, Windows 8 to Windows 11, you're probably going to need to update some software just because the systems are different, that type of thing. Then there's the next tier where it's, the free trial thing I kind of see as free and paid, right? Because you get a free trial, and then if you want to keep using it, then you have to pay. And again, the pay could be different things. Or there's the subscription model, right? Or the membership model. And with that, you're either paying every month or you pay, once a year, however it is it's structured. There's a couple of things with that can be a little bit dangerous. So this, for me, is not necessarily a pro or con. It's just how you would pay. But we'll get into the con of that in a minute. So it's, one-time cost, one time with paid upgrades, subscription, membership. Okay, we got that. So the pros of this are setup is usually much easier, right? So either it comes with instructions or it's got some kind of workflow that a wizard usually that walks you through setting it up, or maybe you just click on something and it installs, but it's much cleaner usually than a lot of the free stuff is. A lot, I'm not saying all, a lot. Support is a given. If you've paid money for it, then there is some sort of support. Again, depending on the size of the company that you are paying for it, it could be a one-person operation. They may be a little slower getting back to you. They may disappear for a period, but there's usually some sort of support offered. Then, of course, as you move up the scale, there'll be, email support, phone support, that type of thing. But there is usually some place to turn if you have a question, if you have a problem. There's usually some level of initial maintenance. So when you first go ahead and pay for it, there's usually a period. Sometimes it's 6 months, sometimes it's a year, 18 months, 2 years, something like that, where you automatically get any updates that they release, which is just a nice way to keep it up to date and all that kind of stuff. There's generally, for a lot of these things, no cost updates if they are security related. So that's a plus too. The depth of functionality is usually better. It's usually deeper and wider with a paid tool because you're paying them. So they've had more time and money to focus on it, hire people, whatever. But there's usually more to it from that scale. And there's usually some kind of upgrade path or some sort of path that you could export your data to put it into something else, depending on what they're going to offer. But usually, when you get to a certain point where maybe you're outgrowing a certain level of the tool, there's either another level of it to go ahead and check out, or like I said, there's a way to transition your stuff from that tool into something else. Now, we're going to talk about the cons because there are some. And the first one, of course, when we're talking about paid is budget, right? You may not have the budget for it. Absolutely. And sometimes that's the deal breaker, right? Sometimes that's the beginning, middle, and end of the problem. So there you go. With the one-time purchases, sometimes you can break that up. So if you read their pages pretty carefully, if it's over a certain amount of money, like that's probably not going to happen for a $50 tool. But when you get into a $1,000 tool, sometimes they'll let you break it into 3 payments or something like that. If it's the ongoing payment kind of thing, so the maintenance kind of thing generally falls into 2 categories. Most of the time with the maintenance thing, that's an option. right? So they're going to offer it to you, but you can keep using the previous version if you don't want to upgrade. I'll circle back on that in a minute. Well, let's just finish the list here. Sometimes paid software can be bloated, right? Sometimes they feel the need because they are asking people to pay for it, or because they have a huge team and they've got to keep them busy. Sometimes they overload the tool with functionality, Adobe, and others. So that is definitely a con for some people, because it just gets in the way, and it sometimes it even slows the tools down. I don't know what's up with him. Doggo, stop, please. Thank you. So let's talk about the payment thing, because this is really the biggest tripping point for a lot of the paid stuff. That is, ideally, you pay for it once and you just keep using it for as long as you want. That was the basic model for everything until a few years ago. Then they started with the membership, right, or maintenance kind of a thing, where you pay for it and then in a year or 2 years, they're going to offer an upgrade at a greatly reduced rate. But in most of the case, like I said, if they're going to offer that, you can keep using the old version. They don't stop you. You just don't get the new functionality. That I'm okay with too. Where I have a problem are the ones that are either monthly or yearly or subscription and membership, where if you don't pay, when they tell you it's time to pay again, they pull your access. That for me is unconscionable, and it's sleazy, because there may be a perfectly reasonable thing that you can't do it. Like, I can't afford gas, food, and my mortgage this way because everything is out of control right now. So I can't make this payment right now, but I still need to do my job, right? So I should be able to say, thanks, but no thanks, but still be keeping using my old version that I paid for. And that's not always the case. Let me give you an example. Adobe tends to be doing that these days. They started to do this even with their maintenance upgrades after a certain point, and I kind of went to war after when they did this to my father, because he was perfectly happy using an old version of Dreamweaver, and they kept locking him out. Now, he had paid for that time and again. He just got to a certain point where he just didn't need to be updating it anymore because he needed it to do just the basic stuff that he was doing, and we really had to go to war over it. And then they gave him a special exemption. It shouldn't take that. If you've paid for software and you decide you don't need the new functionality and you're not expecting them to update what you've got to work on a new OS, you should be able to use it. And they have, the way that their structure is set up is, if you can't pay this month, you can't use it next month. Well, if that's the tool that you rely on to do your job, that's a big problem. So just, again, be aware of the selections you're making. There are always alternatives out there, and you can reach out. I'm happy to let you know. But just really be careful about what it is that you're building on, especially if it's something that you rely on heavily, because that is the one thing on the paid side that makes me very, very angry, in case you can't tell. Hang on one sec. Hello, Jason. How are you? Okay, so hopefully I've offered a balanced view of this whole situation. Like I said, it's not ever the case where one thing is right and the other thing is wrong. And as long as you're going in and you're making decisions and you understand that the path that you're picking means these are good things and these are going to be bad things, and you have a plan to handle the bad, you're good. And there are a lot of free things that I've used, particularly for one-offs. You know, I get some weird file format from somebody, and it's like I need to convert it, and it doesn't work in one of my existing tools that I've paid for. I'll go find an online tool that'll change it, you know, and use it once. If I use it a couple of times, I'll probably send them a donation, just because it's not something I use all the time. I don't want to pay a big fee for it, but if it's helped me, you know, and I can, then I will, you know, certainly send them, you know, money for a coffee or a beer. So, you know, I'm not at all picking on free. We all use free stuff. Free is awesome, just maybe not for like your accounting system or your live streaming tool if you're counting on that, that type of thing. So just take this information, you know, kind of let it float around in your brain when you're making these decisions, and, you know, realize that it's a case-by-case basis, and it's not something to majorly stress over. You know, we all make bad choices at some point. That's okay, as long as you're going in with, you know, your best decision-making in the moment with the information you have. That's all any of us can do. But by at least thinking this through and kind of looking a little bit down the road, you stand a much better chance of picking a tool or a service that's going to be the right choice for you, your business or organization, and your team. And that's all we're looking for here, right? Okay, everybody, one more check. We'll see any questions. We're good. Awesome. For those of you in the US who are in a holiday mood, I'm not, but if you are, by all means, I hope you have a great one. Regardless, I hope everybody has a good weekend. And we will see you again next week on Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. I always bring another topic. You're always welcome to jump into the chat, or if you're watching this on replay, into the comments with other questions, ideas for shows or whatever. If you'd like to reach out direct, right there, yourtechcoach.com. There's a form there. I will try to help you with whatever questions. Or if you have an idea for a show, if you have a topic you want me to cover, I'm happy to do it. Those are the best shows, to be perfectly honest. That's just how it goes. And if you need more help, if you want to do a consult, you can go ahead and set that up here. All right? Thank you all so much. Love it when you guys come by and check things out, and we will talk again soon. Bye. You want to say bye, Murphy? No? Okay, sorry. He's feeling pissy today. Bye. That's a great way to go about it, Tech Troublemaker. Absolutely. I'm a firm believer in that. Bye.